Good evening, I'm Jeff Bennett. Amna Navaz is on assignment. On the NewsHour tonight, Kamala Harris hits the campaign trail with Republican Liz Cheney, while Donald Trump uses increasingly crass rhetoric during his political events. Israel targets banks linked to Hezbollah, how the strikes could hurt the militia group, but also civilians trying to weather Lebanon's financial crisis. And an academic initiative works to revive liberal arts as a key part of the college experience.
I'm not trying to get students away from engineering or business degrees. I'm trying to give them just a much more complete education.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Leonard and Norma Chlorfine, and the Judy and Peter Bloom Kovler Foundation.
Two retiring executives turn their focus to greyhounds, giving these former race dogs a real chance to win. A Raymond James financial advisor gets to know you, your purpose, and the way you give back. Life well planned.
You know, as somebody coming out of college, it can be very nerve-wracking, not knowing what to expect, whether you'll like your job or not, whether you'll make friends, whether you'll fit in. And here, I feel like it's so welcoming and such an inclusive place to work. You just feel like you're valued.
The William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, for more than 50 years, advancing ideas and supporting institutions to promote a better world at hewlett.org. And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. As we near the 2-week mark to Election Day, former President Donald Trump traveled to North Carolina to see the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, while Vice President Kamala Harris toured swing states alongside former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Laura Barone Lopez has this report.
The Democratic nominee for president campaigned with unlikely company today, Republicans.
This election is presenting, for the first time probably in certainly recent history, a very clear choice and difference between the two nominees. And I think that is what, as much as anything, is bringing us as Americans together.
Vice President Kamala Harris spent the day in moderated conversations with former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, starting in Pennsylvania.
I've spent time working in countries where people aren't free and where people are struggling for their freedom. And I know how quickly democracies can unravel. But I tell you, again, as someone who has seen firsthand how quickly it can happen, that is what's on the ballot.
It's the latest in a string of unprecedented events Harris has held with Republican figures like Cheney. The pair then made their way to Michigan for another event.
What is at stake in this election is so fundamental that it really does cross partisan lines.
Meanwhile, Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, spent the morning with the hosts of The View.
Nothing Donald Trump is proposing does anything about the middle class, and every economist, Moody's themselves, talked about what it would do to drive up inflation, potentially leading us to recession. So there's more work to be done. We acknowledge that. I think the vice president's proposals are real.
Former President Donald Trump was in Swannanoa, North Carolina, to tour storm damage from the recent hurricane.
But it's vital that we not let this hurricane that has taken so much also take your voice. You must get out and vote.
Trump repeated baseless claims about the federal government's response to the disaster.
Certainly, you have all heard the same stories that we all hear, that FEMA has done a very poor job. They were not supposed to be spending the money on taking in illegal migrants, maybe so they could vote in the election, because that's a lot of people are saying that's why they're doing it.
Later, the former president again deployed dark and anti-immigrant rhetoric in Greenville, North Carolina.
Under the Trump administration, we are going to take back what is ours. We will end the looting, ransacking, raping, and pillaging of North Carolina and, frankly, every other state in the union.
On Sunday, Trump scooped French fries and served fast food to staged customers at a Pennsylvania McDonald's. The political stunt comes as Trump has accused Harris, without any evidence, of lying about her college job at a McDonald's. On the same day, in an interview with Fox News, Trump again described Democrats like Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi as enemies from within.
You talk about the enemy within. There's enemies, America's enemies outside. The enemy within is a pretty ominous phrase if you're talking about other Americans.
I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate. But when you look at Shifty Schiff and some of the others, yeah, they are, to me, the enemy from within. I think Nancy Pelosi is an enemy from within. She lied.
It's rhetoric Trump used against fellow Americans on a podcast days earlier.
They were saying, he said the enemy from within. Of course it's it. Adam Schiff. These are bad people. These are sick people and bad people.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson deflected when asked on CNN this weekend if Trump's vows to use the National Guard against political enemies was okay.
What President Trump is talking about is that they have been attacking and maligning him from the day he came down that golden escalator. Everybody knows that's true.
At a rally on Saturday in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, hometown of the golf legend Arnold Palmer, the former president started talking about the late golfer's genitalia.
Arnold Palmer was all man, and I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. He took showers with the other pros. They came out of there, they said, oh my God.
At the same rally, Trump used an expletive when talking about Vice President Harris.
We can't stand you, you're a vice president.
In an MSNBC interview with Al Sharpton on Sunday, Harris said the American people deserve better.
And what you see in my opponent, a former president of the United States, really is, it demeans the office. And I have said, and I'm very clear about this, Donald Trump should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. He has not earned the right.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone-Lopez.
Turning now to the Middle East, Israel has launched new attacks in Beirut despite U.S. requests to limit strikes in the Lebanese capital. The target was a financial organization that Israel and the U.S. call Hezbollah's bank, but the bank also provides loans to Lebanese civilians, and human rights groups worry the strikes only worsen the country's financial and humanitarian crises. That's as the U.S. is looking into a leaked document revealing Israel's preparations for attacking Iran. Nick Schifrin reports.
Overnight, right outside the Beirut airport's gates, an Israeli airstrike. Israel ordered the area evacuated before massive airstrikes that destroyed entire buildings and burned storefronts in Hezbollah's stronghold in southern Beirut. By day, those buildings lay crumpled next to apartment complexes whose sides are now blown out. The strikes hit from northern Lebanon in the hills of the Bekaa Valley to Zahrani in the south.
Our store and our livelihood are gone. This neighborhood is all civilian. Our store is right there, and everything is gone.
Across the country, the targets were Al-Qard al-Hassan, that Israel and the U.S. Treasury say Hezbollah uses to manage the group's finances. Herzi Halevi is Israel's top general on a visit today to southern Lebanon.
We struck close to 30 targets across Lebanon. Hezbollah's financial system, Al-Qard al-Hassan, which receives funds from Iran, provides loans, and ultimately finances Hezbollah's terrorism.
One of the things that's unique about Al-Qard al-Hassan is that it is primarily involved in cash and in gold. And so it is possible, by destroying the right brick and mortar Al-Qard al-Hassan entities, to destroy a lot of their US dollars.
Matt Levitt directs the Washington Institute's Counterterrorism and Intelligence Program and is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intelligence at Treasury.
What the Israelis do want to do is make sure that Hezbollah can't finance its militia and terrorist activity and will have difficulty rebuilding itself once the dust settles.
But the airstrikes have sparked a humanitarian crisis and driven a quarter of the country to flee their homes.
There is no safe place, and they just don't know how to cope because they just fear for their life.
Damien Marquette is the Lebanon emergency team leader for the International Rescue Committee, which says 90% of the population is not able to meet its basic needs.
People in the street will say, we just need a roof. People who had a roof will say, like, we need shelter material, we need a blanket, we need a mattress, we need water, we need food.
The numbers of civilian casualties have been far too high.
Even before today, U.S. officials objected to the extent of Israeli airstrikes in Beirut. Today, top presidential envoy Amos Hochstein blamed Hezbollah and acknowledged the destruction the war had wrought.
A resolution was possible, but it was rejected, and the situation has escalated out of control as we feared that it could.
Israelis today remain focused on Hezbollah rockets and drones, more than 170 intercepted today, including above the heads of mourners who took cover in a cemetery as they buried a man killed this past weekend by a Hezbollah strike nearby in northern Israel. And Israel is preparing to strike Iran for its unprecedented attack of 180 ballistic missiles on October the 1st. An Israeli official tells PBS NewsHour the Israeli cabinet has not yet approved a response. But a document posted online last week reveals U.S. spy satellites picked up Israel preparing long-range air-launched ballistic missiles, covert drone operations, and conducting a second large military exercise, but no indications that Israel intends to use a nuclear weapon. U.S. officials said today they do not expect additional similar documents to go public, as Secretary of State Antony Blinken left today for his 11th trip to Israel since the October 7th attacks. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.
And we start the day's other headlines in New Mexico, where water levels are starting to recede after record rainfall left at least 2 people dead. National Guard officials say more than 300 people have been rescued since Saturday, with dozens brought to nearby hospitals with injuries. The National Weather Service says nearly 6 inches of rain fell on Roswell on Saturday, breaking a record set back in 1901. That sent water gushing down streets, trapping vehicles, and leaving entire homes submerged. Tropical storm Oscar battered eastern Cuba today as the entire island deals with an electrical grid failure that has left millions without power. Oscar made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in the Guantanamo province late yesterday with winds of 70 miles per hour. It unleashed up to 20 inches of rain in some areas, raising concerns about flooding and mudslides. On the other side of the island, protesters in Havana banged pots and pans amid ongoing blackouts following Friday's nationwide power outage. There are concerns that Oscar could hurt efforts to get the power back on. The White House has proposed a new rule that would require health insurers to cover over-the-counter contraception and birth control at no cost to patients. That's on top of prescribed contraception, which is already covered. The rule would include emergency contraception as well as the new over-the-counter birth control, O-pill. The proposed rule would not affect those on Medicaid, and it has a 60-day public comment period before it would be finalized. The White House today called birth control a fundamental right.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have women out there who don't have the protections that they need on their own health care because Roe v. Wade, which was law of the land for almost a constitutional right for almost 50 years, were stripped away. And we have made that commitment from this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, to protect women, to do everything that we can.
The White House says if approved, the new rule would increase coverage of contraception for 52 million women of reproductive age who have private health insurance. A bipartisan congressional task force says that stunning security failures contributed to the July assassination attempt on former President Trump. The House panel drew on documents, interviews, and briefings